let's talk mistakes on planting potatoes, because I have learned many this year. It is my first year planting potatoes, so, a lot to learn, certainly. My top 3 mistakes, I think, are probably common mistakes. However, I am hoping that you can learn from my mistakes and be successful in planting potatoes because, ultimately, in the right conditions, potatoes are really an easy crop to grow. However, you just need to really make sure that you're prepping the right amount of space, the right environment, and if they have the right conditions, they will thrive. Mistake number 1 was not planning. Now, I'm going to give myself a little bit of grace here because I was probably about 8 to 10 weeks pregnant at the beginning of the garden season. I was exhausted all the time. If you've been pregnant, first trimester, really rough. I have a toddler as well, so certainly a lot harder on your second pregnancy once you actually have a kiddo. A lot of it just kind of got away from us, and a lot of it was just harder this year to do than we expected. I did not get the entire garden bed prepped for all of our vegetables until probably the 3rd or 4th week in May. We are in zone 5B. So in Wisconsin, ideally, you want to get your potatoes in 2 to 3 weeks before our last frost. And most people consider Memorial Day, to be the last frost date around here. And you can even get them in earlier, like late April, early May. Some people do that around here. And so next year, I plan to have them in about the 1st week in May to really give them time to grow, because they can be successful in 45 to 55 degree soil. As long as you have it covered and if the soil is warm enough, you can get them in the ground. So next year I will definitely be getting them in the ground sooner so that they have significant time to really grow. And that kind of leads into the second issue that I had with them not getting them into the ground soon enough, is that it made it so that they were growing longer into my summer season and really kind of breaking into when I would want to plant fall crops. And since they were still in the ground, I could not plant my fall crops there, which obviously makes it hard to get things in on time and get things growing. So that I will definitely have them in the ground earlier next year so that they A, get a head start, and B, I can start to plant my fall crops. I was super lucky. I got the last 2 bags of seed potatoes at Menards when I went the 3rd or 4th week of May to get my seed potatoes. And they were probably looking at me like crazy, like you should have these in the ground already. But because I was so behind, I did not cut any of them in half and let them cure. I just put them in whole. They were pretty large and they had a lot of eyes on them that were already kind of sprouting. And I think I would have probably doubled my harvest if I would have taken the time, if I would have planned a little bit better and cut them off, let them cure for a couple of days, and then put them into the ground. We'll throw this in the compost pile. So mistake number 2 was not prepping our soil well enough. So while I do think we did a decent job at prepping the soil, it was still pretty loose. I did mix in some compost into it that I had purchased, some organic compost from a local nursery. I think we could have tilled it more and really worked with the soil a little bit more before we got the potatoes into the ground. Next year, we will definitely be working with the soil a lot more. And now, since this is really our first year gardening in this area, I think the more we work with the soil year over year, the looser it'll become and the easier that it will be growing. Obviously, we will be rotating our crops, but we're going to be using the same beds, so each bed will have been worked with a vegetable the year prior. So it will continue to be loosened and we'll continue to add more, nutrition to the soil. And so I just think it'll make it grow better year over year.
Do you want me to do it, or are you enjoying doing it?
I don't mind doing it. You can do it too, though, if you want to enjoy the fruits of your labor.
Good pudding, huh? You're working on your balance. Come sit on my lap. See all the potatoes out there? You help Mama put more potatoes in there?
The third mistake that I made was not identifying blight soon enough in my russet potatoes. I dug up my red potatoes a week before I dug up my russet potatoes. My red potatoes were great as far as very little amount was rotten or unusable from what I was able to actually dig up. So it really surprised me the next weekend when I went to dig up my russet potatoes. They were like half of them were rotten. And I honestly couldn't understand why, because I had just dug up my red potatoes and they were fine. And they were literally right next to it. So I had no idea. I posted on a Facebook page. I was like, what the heck happened? And almost everyone commented that it was late onset blight, which made sense because we had a lot of rain in between the two harvests. And I know that you don't really want to get them wet too long before you want to harvest them because it can cause that rotting. And had I really thought about that, I would have then dug them up right away before I let them kind of just sit in that rain soil for an entire week. And I think I could have prevented a lot of that. And I think for me, it's just understanding next year the signs of what blight looks like and just being able to nip that as soon as I can if I identify that next year. I've learned a lot about potato growing this year, and I know that this is just the tip of the iceberg as far as the things that I will learn and continue to learn in the future. We certainly have a long way to go about learning to homestead and learning about everything that it comes to with growing. But I hope that you can take these 3 things that I learned about potatoes this year at my first year growing and apply them to your growing next year. If you've learned anything about potatoes in your experience, please, please, please drop them in the comments below, share so that we can all learn together. I will absolutely be happy to take anyone else's tips or advice. Thanks for joining us this time around. I look forward to seeing you guys all on the next video. Bye.